the greatest thing about being a small business owner? I have no one to tell me what to do. But isn't the worst thing about being the small business owner? I have no one to tell me what to do. And so it's that kind of an idea of if we don't have somebody to protect us from us as the owners, I would probably create 20 different goals, right?
This is the Succeeding Small podcast, and we are on a mission to turn your entrepreneurial dream into a small business success story. We give you the strategies and insights from business owners and topic experts who are invested in your success. Leadership, operations, finance, marketing, growth. These are all topics we need to know as service-based businesses as we scale to the next level. Consider this your masterclass for small business success. Get ready for tactical business strategy and authentic conversations about scaling and entrepreneurship. We tackle it all to help you achieve your business's full potential. Ready to be challenged and inspired? Let's succeed small. I am so excited to be able to welcome Christopher Nicholas onto the Succeeding Small podcast. He has been such an instrumental figure in my scaling business journey. So I'm just so excited and honored to be able to have you here today and to get to learn from you. You are just a wealth of knowledge, of inspiration, and have so much to bring to the table when it comes down to how to scale service-based businesses. So thank you so much for being on today and for talking about one of the most pertinent topics as we roll into Q4, which is goal setting and goal planning. We're rolling into 2025, and a lot of small businesses are starting to think about what does that goal look like? What does that year look like for them? And being able to have the topic that we want to discuss today, I think is going to be so relevant. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Madeline. I'm super excited to talk about the topic and hopefully gives people some actionable items and good takeaways.
Yes. Before we dive in, please tell the audience who you are and what your area of expertise is with what we're going to share today.
Yeah, so Christopher Nicholas, and I'm the CEO over at Springs Law Group. We're a personal injury firm here in Colorado Springs. Started out in 2017, have a staff of about 17, 18 people. And we do some TV, a little bit of radio, some other things like that, but definitely really big on the customer service side of the law. I've worked in retail and restaurants for a long time, and I was a school teacher before this. So even doing this right now, getting out there and being able to teach and help others in the business world grow and find new concepts and get better is what I love talking about.
Yes, I love that. I just love being able to sit down with you and learn from you. Part of the biggest, I think, takeaways of things that you do is that constant learning and that love of business. So talk to us about what goal setting means to you. And you have a very specific strategy that you've been following that you want to share with people. So let's get into that.
Yeah, so I went to a training earlier this year with Jason Selk. It's Dr. Jason Selk. He is a mental psychologist, and he taught us the difference between process goals and product goals. And so for us, we've implemented that this year. It's been really helpful. And so to break them down, a product goal is going to be your big goal. So for people going into Q4, or even people planning for 2025, would be that Q4, that 90-day push, right? What's that one big goal that we want to have as a business that we want to push towards? So like for our example, ours is to be a profitable law firm. Profit can be $1, it could be $1 million, but it could be to be profitable. So that's your product goal. And so even as you're going forward in 2025, you want to have that idea of what is a product goal that I want for the entire business as a whole. Now, you can also break those down too and have them be a personal, for you with it as an individual within the business as well, right? What's a product goal for me within the business? What product do I want to see a result from? But then at the same time, then the way that you achieve that product goal is by your process goals. And your process goals are going to be those small, achievable, daily things that you do that will get you to your product goal at the end. And so it's and Dr. Selk talks about the idea of you want 1 to 3 process goals each day. One of the quotes that he had, because he's worked with sports teams and things like that, is how we do one thing is how we do everything. And so each day that we go in, how we do one thing has to be how we do everything. And there's a whole protocol that we can talk about on how we get it set up, but then also how we can do check-ins with our team to make sure that they're doing well and achieving on their process goals as well.
Okay, I love this. I love this way of thinking about setting those big picture goals, but then having that daily accountability to get
Yeah.
things done. So, starting with
Yeah.
that big vision goal, can you give
Mhm.
some examples of what that might look like? And I noticed that you were talking about how $1 versus the
Right.
bigger
Right.
amount. So, do you follow the SMART goal format when it comes down to setting those big product goals, or is it supposed to be more broad?
It can. I like one that's a little bit more fluid, and I think it depends on your personality, right? Because if you've got that type A personality, you may be somebody that's like, no, I need the exact number down to the penny to know. For us as a firm and as a business and as a leadership team, when we talked about the idea that, hey, we just really want to be profitable this year. And if that's turning a page for us, that will really push us forward. Now, the following year, it could switch to we want to go from this many clients to this many clients, right? And it can be an exact based on a percentage or a number. Again, giving you something to push towards. And I think in a situation like that with your clients, it'd be a good thing to be like, hey, with new customers or what have you, like, hey, I want a specific bump up. So the idea of just like more customers may not actually work there, right? Yeah, I think having an actual defined number or a percentage bump up from LY or last year would actually be really helpful. And
Mm.
so that's the way that I look at it. And I do think it's a good thing if you have a leadership team or even another trusted. So if you're a small business, but you've got a trusted partner or somebody in a position like an operations person, get together with them and have those conversations, and they're well worth it.
I love that. Okay, this is very relevant to what a lot of small businesses are going through right now. And I think it can be really challenging for businesses to take that big picture goal and be able to translate it down to the team and even further giving them those process goals, those action items so that
Yeah.
they can help contribute to the bigger picture. So what can you describe that process of how you go from that leadership team and disperse those goals throughout the company and give people those action items and get them bought in to
Yeah.
what the company is trying to achieve?
Yeah, so I think you've got to always use, especially as a leader, you have to use yourself as the example. And so you need to have that, and you have to be intentional about your time. So it can't just be in a once over a quick 15-minute meeting. This is probably an hour-long meeting that you're going to do and schedule for everybody to walk through with it. And generally, too, what do I like for a Q4 meeting? I want that meeting at the end of September. With us being past this, again, to me, there's always no time like the present. So the sooner the better. Let's have that conversation. And so obviously, if we roll into next year, we want to have that meeting at the end of December or right before holiday so that we've got a plan in place to move forward. But I use myself as the example and say, okay, if I know that as the business as a whole, I want it to be profitability, great. What are 1 to 3 things that I could do each day, every single day, that would help us move forward? Now, a lot of people get stuck and they're like, I don't know, I just do this stuff every day. So for me, it's like being intentional about doing check ins with my team. But one thing Dr. Selk talks about too is as we're really thinking about those process goals, we want to be careful of both underestimating what we can do, but also overestimating. So he's like, ask yourself this. So one could be is like, I want to read a leadership book every day, right? Or a part of a leadership book each day. Great, to become a better leader within the business. But then you block yourself out for an hour. And he goes, ask yourself truly, when is the last time you sat down for a whole hour straight to just read, right? And it all sounds great. The road is paved for good intentions, right? And we all think about that. And sure, it's totally going to happen. But he's like, no, he's like, the best thing for something like that is actually 15 minutes.
Okay.
Give yourself 15 minutes to read, and then you're done. You've hit that one. And now that may be the only one you have, but now you've got to win. Now, does that necessarily make you profitable today? No. But time over action and that compounding effect over throughout the rest of the quarter, throughout the rest of the year, will absolutely have momentum. And it's similar to Dave Ramsey's snowball effect that he has, right? Whenever he talks about paying off debt, smallest to largest. Same thing here, right? You keep doing those process goals over and over, and then it'll help you in that sense. And one of the things we were talking about earlier was the idea too of repetition and how Dr. Salk is very big on you cannot fear repetition because you're basically going to rinse and repeat this thing over and over and over again. So whatever your 1 to 3 process goals are each day, you're going to rinse and repeat them. And you have to be intentional about it. And he goes, and so with that, he's like, if I start getting a little bored or a little like twitchy with, the way I'm feeling about it now, and he's like, you get in and you're doing well. And then 2 months in, you're like, yeah, I've got this thing down pat. I'm good. And then you go, I'm going to switch it up a little bit because that self guy over there, that trainer, that Chris, he has no idea what he's talking about. And you go and you're like, I know better now. I'm going to change it up. He goes, what's going to happen is you've got your process goals, which they're not moving like this. They're just on this slow upgrade, right? You're going to take that and now you're going to dive down because you're letting your foot off the gas of that consistency. So if you need other people within your team to help you be accountable. So we actually have, like, for myself, my staff's big enough that my operations manager is in charge of meeting with the team each week to do check-ins. And we can talk about what those look like too.
Yeah, let's dive into it. Let's talk about those check-ins, especially when it
Yeah,
trickles down into your organization. I think that it's one thing to
yeah,
hold yourself accountable and do your little checklist
right,
and
right.
but it's a whole
Yeah,
other thing to make sure that a whole company is on track.
yeah. So there's a thing too. So with the check-ins, they're 15 minutes. So we do not want a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting. They're structured. So she does it once a week, 15 minutes, structured in and out. And there's some questions that each team member has to answer and give to her at the beginning of the week on how they did the week prior. So the first thing that we want to look at is what we call our done wells. And you want to answer at least 3 done wells for that prior week. So within the prior week, what are 3 things that you did well? And a lot of people are like, why do I need to talk to my workmates about what's going well? But there's a thing about science too, where Dr. Salk talks about that. It's actually scientific, where if we can set ourselves up by realizing what things we're actually doing well, it'll make us better performers. It'll help those perfectionists not be so hard on themselves. It'll help other people come up with good ideas and start seeing their accomplishments as we move through. So you always start with the done wells. And then we break down what each of the 3 process goals are. So if you have 3, if you have 2, or if you have 1, and then they have to self-rate it on a 1 to 10 scale on how they did. And so that rating system is important. So obviously a 10 is perfection. Did you hit it every single day this week without any issue? And so if you did, a 10 might be more than likely could be warranted, but were you giving focus time and effort to that thing? And then you talk about too at the end of going through those rankings, then you look at and ask the question of what is one thing that you can do better next week to get yourself a little closer to 10. And
Hmm.
so they help set themselves up, right? So then that gives the person checking in as well an ability the following week to go, hey, how did that change work for you? How did that adaptation or what have you work out for you in that sense too?
Okay.
And so that's a simple like breakdown too on how the check-ins can go. But short and sweet, we're not here to talk about outside. I had this issue with this customer. I got this meeting coming up. That's not what that meeting's for. Short and sweet, and it works, and it can work even very well via Zoom. So it can be in person, it can be done via Zoom, anything like that. It's a really practical way to go about doing it. And then I want to talk for a minute too, just about the idea of, I think there at times we had a little bit of confusion and pushback too on the idea of, is my process goal, like for us, we have customers who, are clients that come in and we have cases to work on or what have you. So, and most people too will have customers where they've got to do X. So like, for example, like if you had a plumber, they're going to have an appointment that they have to go to. Question is, can I count that appointment as a process goal, or is that what that is in that sense? Is the day-to-day actual work of doing the thing, is it going to lead me closer to what I want? And I think the way we have to look at that is this idea of that's doing the day-to-day work, but also we have to step back and look at our process goals. Are those going to be things that will help us push towards that product goal at the end? So always ask that question. Obviously, doing the work itself is one thing, but I would question, even so, if you've got like a plumber who's got appointments with clients, one process goal that I would ask somebody like that would be are there 2 clients or 1 client that I could call a day and just do a touch base, do a follow-up with? Like, how was your experience? Okay, is there an old client that I could reach out to as a former client, as a possible referral source? Something like that to help get you towards that profitability goal or whatever that may be. So again, it doesn't have to be over the moon. We generally find for us that like the actual doing of the exact work each day, like, those usually aren't those things. They're going to be other things that you have to think a little bit outside the box and go, okay, what are some things that I can do that's not only just the job, but that's going to help enhance the job. That's going to help enhance my, life, my style, and how I go about doing things.
Yeah, so it brings some intentionality into their day to day, some strategy and
I think
strategic
so.
thinking. If this
Yeah.
is not just something that I clock in and clock out, it's not this routine that I'm
Right.
just so used to. I think that's the beauty of goals is it can bring that focus into people's everyday lives. And so when they
Yeah.
have that big picture thing focusing them and
Yep.
orienting them, they can take those everyday moments and make them
Yes.
mean something and go a step further because they
Agreed.
know what they are going for. It's not
Right.
just the day to day, it's the bigger picture.
Yep.
So I really like that. Talk to me about how do you typically see organizations setting one primary goal, like the concept of profitability, or what happens when an organization has a couple big picture goals? And how does that come into play with processes? Because if you have, for
Yeah.
example, three product goals, then you
Mhm.
will have three process goals for each one. So, what does that look like? Is that too much?
So I don't know necessarily. It depends on the size of the company, but I do think potentially you could run product goals by department. And then that way too, each department is getting different process goals, you know what I mean, down that funnel to hit that product goal. Now, if it's a smaller business that's saying, I want to have three product goals, and I want to have, if it's new clients, profitability, and something to do with marketing or what have you, right? So three different buckets. Now, if you're that person though that's wearing all those different hats, then I think there's a reason then at that point you probably do need three process goals to try one for each area. And then the nice thing about it is too, you can then step back after getting some data, because the thing we always want is facts, not feelings. Because after a week, you may be like, oh my gosh, this is the dumbest thing I've ever felt. This is ridiculous. It's never going to work. That's a feeling state. We need facts and data to show, is this going to work or not? With process goals, I usually like 60 to 90 days to help see, are we getting movement? And then you could ask yourself then, if you're the small business with three, you can go, maybe I need to actually regroup right now during this quarterly meeting and go, we only need two. And then it gives you a chance to edit and then do a little bit of an audit right there. The greatest thing about being a small business owner, I have no one to tell me what to do. But isn't the worst thing about being the small business owner? I have no one to tell me what to do. And so it's that kind of an idea of, if we don't have somebody to protect us from us as the owners, I would probably create 20 different goals, right? But the reality is that I do think we need some voices of reason that can help us go, wait a minute, hold on. Because most of us, we generally want to move. Like in my head, I'm already moving way down here. I move really fast. And even up here, I move even faster, right? I want results very quickly. So I do think we need some people to be like, oh, maybe that one process goal right now, and we do that for this quarter, and then we can check and see where are we at, and then we move forward next.
Mm. Yeah. So to have those checks and balances, I really love being a small business, getting your team involved in the company's goals and where they want to go. So, being able to have those conversations with your team, starting with that leadership team, trickling down, but being able to create that culture of feedback where they're able to tell you those things, tell
Yeah.
you, the
Yes.
CEO, that, like, hey, that's too much. I don't think we're going to accomplish that. That is powerful when your people can actually tell you something like that. So, I love the concept of involving everybody from that place of, hey, this is in the beginning stages, this is a brainstorm. This is able
Yep.
to, like, let's talk about the vision and where we want to go. And
Mhm.
please give me feedback on those things because you guys are going to be the ones carrying
Yes.
these
Yes.
out the
Yeah.
majority of the time. So definitely involving them in that process, in that creation process. I think that can get them bought in way quicker where they see the vision and they want the vision for themselves and they get
Yeah.
excited about it. They're
Yes.
not just being told what to do,
Right.
but also can be that checks and balances for you because people like visionaries like me have all the ideas. And that's where we really shine is getting to present all those opportunities and seeing that dream and all of the different things that go to it.
Yeah.
So to have that reality check on the other side of the table from people who care about your organization, it's such a powerful aspect of what you can do as a small business.
I agree. And I think I've got two little like extra bonus things too that you just touched on there. So at our business, what we have is we have a thing every other week called the Fix It Team meeting. So it's called the Fix It Team. And when we were smaller, we had it as well. But then I was a little bit more involved at first. The reality of what you do in the Fix It team is the team members then come in and go, okay, what issues are we having? What needs to be fixed here from an operations standpoint, from a procedural standpoint, from a process standpoint, anything else within the business? They then can take that upwards to leadership or to the owner and say, hey, at the Fix It team, this thing would really help me understand and answer the phone better. I didn't know, like we had somebody at our Fix It team meeting this past week, a newer employee. She's like, I don't know how to transfer the phone. We did a Loom video training for them this past week. We've got it in our SOPs now and things like that. So the Fix It team can be really eye-opening because it's that idea as an owner and as leadership, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So to get the team members in a room, and it's not a complaining session. It's a fix it session. We're not there to gripe. We're there to help figure out, can we solve this problem? Because maybe even somebody in that room actually has gone through that and can solve that problem right then. And it never comes back to me. But I do think the Fix It team has been one of the better things we've done consistently to give our team, because I'm never in those meetings. And generally, most of my leadership is not in those meetings. It's just the team members who are getting a voice to say, here's X. Now, obviously, then as owners and leadership, what do we have to do when they bring those issues? We have to help solve that then. Because if we just let it lie, they're going to look at the Fix It team meeting as like just being a joke and nothing that's where anything's getting accomplished. But I find the Fix It team as a good way to say, I don't want to micromanage.
Right.
And so I don't want to control every aspect as the boss of every detail that's going on, because the people in the trenches, like you were talking about, they understand the day-to-day and things that will help them be better more than I do these days. So that was the first thing. The second thing is this idea too. It's Dan Martell's 1-3-1 rule, which you and I have talked about in the past, but it is that idea of anytime an employee has an issue, then they can bring up that one problem to you. They have to create 3 solutions. And then when they do that though too, you just ask them, which one of those do you like the best? Because they've had the time to think about it and actually process. And that can be really scary for employees, because most of the time they're just told, no, I will give you the answer. I want them to do that. So then when they create the answer and the solution, I think everybody rises up. And then you as the owner, boss, or leader are going to say, hey, great, you thought about it? Try that one. And if that one doesn't work, we've got 2 others over here that could be really amazing as well. And so I think that's what it is. So 1 problem, 3 solutions, and then 1 ultimate solution that they go out and try.
I love that.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yes, I love talking culture and how you can build this organization to support what you are doing, accomplish those visions that you have, and ultimately help create a better place for your customers, for your team, for your leadership, for your clients, all of the above. Talk to me about those meetings that you have in the very beginning when you go and set those process goals. How do you get some employees to set those process goals? Do you have them set them for themselves and come up with their own ideas?
Yes.
And can you give several examples of what that looks like on the employee level?
Yeah. So for us, from a standpoint, is what we did is we did individual meetings, or if we have a group of people, so we have paralegals, we have multiple. So we would meet with that group of paralegals, not just one. So within a 3 process goal setup, even for us as leadership, we're like, we really want to make sure this one process goal is happening. So for us, that is taking 30 minutes to review a client case file. Great. So something like that, every paralegal would have. And then we set it up there. And then we say to them, then you get 2 more. Now, what you can do then, the thing, sometimes it's that feeling that we get here, like in our stomach, right? As a leader, when somebody's like, well, I really think it'd be great if I was able to go and read the newest comic book or what have you, or if I could just go watch SportsCenter for about half an hour. That'd really help me get my juices flowing up here. And then you're like, nope, let's bring you back. And now let's talk about process goals, right? So what I like about us, like providing one, is it gives them an example and a jumping off point, going, okay, here's what it is. And then we can then, with that, so if we say them talking to a client, reviewing a client file for 30 minutes. So how does that get us to profitability? It does in the long run, because what does the paralegal find out? They find out information about that client. They find out details that they then can relay to the attorney or their supervisor. They find out information that they can now take and make the case and the customer experience even better. Because one of the biggest things on our end is one of the bigger complaints is for lawyers and law firms is lack of communication. And so if we have people now that are reaching out consistently, we're getting a better experience. We're finding out more information. So what's that ultimately going to do to our bottom line? It's going to raise our profitability up because it's going to bring in more revenue in the long run. It's going to make our cases more valuable, things like that. And think about it even from a small service business base. If you have products you want to upsell or do things like that, the way you find that out is by having conversation with people. So there's a good way to start. And when you do that, now you're making connection. So when it finally comes time for that ask, you probably have a really good relationship and they're going to be like, absolutely, let's just do it. You know what I mean? You had me at hello, the thing way back here. You didn't even have to sell me on it because I know, like, and trust you. And so we try to do like one that we talk about as a leadership team is what's one thing that we see, then it helps them push forward. Those meetings were probably 30 minutes to an hour, and it's just a brainstorming session on, hey, let's talk about it for a minute. Within your day to day, what are repeatable things that you do, right? We're not trying to recreate the wheel with brand new, like, aha things. Hey, can you please go and create your own chatbot on AI or do things? We don't need that. We need the simple processes, but we just want to make sure they're done each day. So the interesting thing too, and you talked about like now, what do those meetings actually look like? So then what we do, the moment then that they've got them created, they're 1, 2, and or 3 process goals. Now the next most important part is you have them bring out their laptop or their phone, and it must go in their calendar, repeatable. Every time it is mandatory, it must be in their calendar. And so I could show my calendar looks bananas because I've got process goals for every employee just like floating throughout everywhere if I look at everybody. But the reality is if we don't put it on our calendar, one is the day's going to just get by us, right? Because stuff just comes up and things just happen and everything else. But it also tells everybody else in the business, I am busy doing this thing now at this time. And we're always really big too, is that we want to honor our time and we want to honor everybody else's time. So when there's an appointment set, like a process goal, we leave that person alone. It's not time to interrupt with phone calls or do other things like that. Everybody knows for that period of time, that person's blocked out.
I love that.
Really helpful.
Talk to me about how you collect the data to see if you are on track. What does that process look like of that quarterly goal analyzation? How do you go and measure those efforts? And what does that look when you go and convey that information to the team?
Yeah, so we use Airtable to collect all of our big numbers and data. Airtable is a quasi like Excel program. But then we've set up both the worksheets for the weekly through Airtable, but we've also done it, and it can be static as well. So if you have a small enough business, they have a stack of papers. Each week I've got to fill this out. I can scan it or I can email it back. I think too, the other thing you could do with something like that is you could do it with a Google Doc and just have a Google Doc go out, which would be really simple there. But Airtable then houses all of the information. It'll let us know where people are ranking themselves on what that average looks like and how they're progressing. But then it also then obviously with Airtable too, we see all of our data. So our new clients, our numbers, and things like that way too, we can correlate the two things.
I like that. Okay, very interesting. So, if a small business were to implement this process, what does that end level of success look like? Can you describe if you were in that moment of you have achieved what you were doing, you had that consistent year, describe that moment of success and what is possible for small businesses if they go down this track?
Yeah. So I heard this interesting definition of success. It was a two-parter from this book I just read, but one of his second part was this idea of I know that I'll be successful when I don't have to worry.
Hmm.
And I was like, it was a fascinating like thought piece for me. And so if you think about this, the reality is, are we ever truly done with our process goals? And the answer is no. However, for example, one of our attorneys, she has a goal of reading 30 minutes of this. It's a super boring legislative book on process of how cases work, right? At some point, she's going to get to the end of that. So then at that point, we can say, yes, we have accomplishment, which is amazing. But now what do? We have to implement a new process goal at that point because we're still pushing forward. The same way that we celebrate the wins for each week, you have to be intentional. So anytime, even as a small business, and I believe this is even if you're a solo business owner, you must be intentional too about as you sit there on your laptop or your iPad and review your numbers, you have to sit there and go, that was pretty freaking awesome. A lot of people, we get stuck in this idea of we just got to move on to the next month, move on to the next year, and it can be that thing of the grind. But I think unless we're intentional, we stop and we step back and talk about the wins, we can always talk about struggles because those are fairly easy to do. You have to talk about your wins. You have to talk about them with your team. When you see somebody do a good job, stop and give them a high five. When my operations manager is seeing people that are actually going from like a 7 one week to a 10 the next week, she celebrates it. You celebrate it with affirmation. She'll send it to me and things like that in Slack or what have you. But we have to be able to celebrate your team members for doing a good job. And so it doesn't take a lot to make someone feel good. And I think you as an owner are obligated, but that also includes yourself. I know enough owners who are really hard on themselves because our goals are really big, or we're not where we want to be yet, or I'm not where that person that I see on social is, or that person in that marketing group is. I'm not as far along as they are. But I do think the question is, if you do these process goals, every day you're a step further than where you were the day before. And so if you give yourself a little bit of grace and just say, I have movement, I've moved, and I'm better today than I was yesterday, then it's totally a win.
Mm. That's powerful. Being able to really keep your energy high when it comes down to what you're trying to accomplish. It can
Yeah,
get so easy to get lost in that day to day, in that grind, and feeling that goal feels so far away. But slowing down and taking those moments to really just celebrate and acknowledge what you've been able to do. And I love the concept of these process goals because you can literally see the process. You can see the progress of what you've been able to
yeah,
achieve of I did this every single day. I gave it
right.
my best. I did it my all. And that alone is a win. So being able to treat yourself with the same grace and respect and celebration as you would your employees, that's a really good reminder that we too are important and should have that level of acknowledgement on what we are trying to do. That way we can be able to show up every day, show up to our team, keep leading them, keep guiding them in the positive directions, and not necessarily get stuck in that messy middle of
Yeah, yeah.
discouragement.
And I think the crazy thing is, as small business owners, is there's moments, and I don't know how you feel about it, but like where you feel like you're on an island, that it's just you out there. No one else has any idea what's happening. No one else knows what you're going through. And you can feel really isolated at times, both in celebrating and in struggle. But the reality and the good thing about this podcast and other things like that is you're not on an island. And so even to say, hey, friend that I've in the community, or people could reach out to you or what have you and say, hey, I tried this thing. It wasn't perfect, but heck, I know that I'm further along today down the road than I was before, which is awesome. And then how great is it to have an attaboy or that was great? And then alternatively, when we're struggling, to have other people say, you know what? I've been there. Things are hard, and but you can do this. And so too often we just think that it's just the whole world's on your shoulders, and it's like, how do I get through this? There's people out there that want to help, that want to listen, and that can definitely lift each other up. Because not only should we do it downward for our team and help lift them up, because if aren't we a great business if we're lifting up our team members every day and making them better? But also we need to have a community of people that we can do as owners and help lift each other up as well too. Because I once heard another small law firm owner say this once too, and he goes, "There's enough business out there for everybody to do very well, everyone, and we can all do it." So there's no need for the undercutting or anything like that. And even the undercutting on ourselves, it doesn't do anyone any good. There's plenty of people that talk about the dopamine hit that most of us get from doing a checklist. And that your people can ask themselves too, right? Everybody listening can ask themselves, am I somebody that whenever I have a checklist, but if I do something off of the checklist, I will run back, write that thing in and check it off just so I can get that dopamine hit, right? Aren't the process goals on your calendar in some way that thing? And so if we add those process goals, which are daily things that we're doing anyway each day, if we do that and they're boring and repetitive, but we know we can do it and that they're going to make us better, why not just get that dopamine hit by checking that box off every single day? And then you'll be a lot better.
I love that. Yes, I highly believe in community over competition. If
Mm-hmm.
we can find ways to collaborate with one another and be able to share our problems, to celebrate the successes, to have that accountability in someone
Right.
else, or just have somebody else on that island with you. Such
Absolutely.
that is so needed in this space of entrepreneurship. And I think it's very challenging too for people who are in that scale, because they get to that point in business where they no longer have the same level of resources or support or friends who have gotten to that place that they are now in. And so it becomes this shift of, okay, when I started, I felt like I had so many things around me, so many aspects that I could reach out and grab to be able to provide me as I go along my journey. And there's this point when you start scaling where it becomes very lonely and
Right.
becomes more isolated, because you are now doing things that you've never had to do before. You
Yeah.
have to become a person that you have not been before. You have to teach yourself those skills and be able to accomplish dreams bigger than yourself.
Right.
And so when you're in that little island of scale, having a place like this podcast, having a place, a community that you can go to, having people that you can share your problems and celebrate those wins is just a game changer when it comes down to ultimately reaching that level of success that you're wanting to.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting the idea of scaling. And I always look at it as I think you're switching rooms as you scale, right? And so the reality is you might be really comfortable in a room, but one of my old coaches used to have this phrase called discomfort is the currency. And so then as we move forward now into the new room, like you're saying, where it's like everything felt really good over here. Now here, these guys are talking on a level, these owners are talking on a level that is so much out of my league right now. But the reality is that you actually do own a seat at that table because you're in that room right now and you have some life experience to give somebody in that room that could help them in some way. And then at some point, guess what happens is as you stay in that room, you're not the person all the way back here anymore. You're the person now up here giving the talk or doing those types of things. And then now, whenever you're at that spot, guess what you probably need to do? You need to switch rooms again.
Yes.
And so you got to keep doing that because the scaling generally never stops. It's the same type of thing as like the process goal, product goals. Do they ever really truly stop? Probably not. When you become the person in that room who's just only speaking, but you're not listening anymore, you might need to switch rooms because there's probably some other value out there that you need to get from somebody. So it's a good thing. And I think there's such, and it goes with the whole thing of being a lifelong learner. If you want to continue to do that, you've got to make sure that you keep on moving forward.
Yes. Speaking of that, because you are one of my most favorite people to get business insight from and diving into what the latest thing is. So, what is the book or piece of education? What are you into now that you think scaling small businesses could benefit from? What's one piece of education that they should go dive into?
Okay, so I'll give one book and one podcast. So the book that I obviously Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. He's a coach. If people haven't gotten it, I'd highly recommend it. Or if you do not have it, I will buy it for you and send it to you. I love that book so much and believe that it can help anyone out that is a business owner. So you can get my information. I'm happy to give it to you at the end. And you send me an email or a text, and I will send you that book. And the second one is a podcast called Money Wise. Now, this is an interesting one. It's done by the guy who does My First Million podcast. But Money Wise is a deeper dive into what actually like millionaires and billionaires, like 100 millionaires. Now, again, scaling, obviously, you're like, whoa, we were talking scaling. But I do think it's important for us, if we are scaling, we need to know where we want to get. And so what they do with MoneyWise is they end up talking to these people, not just about how they got there. That's not what it's really about. It's what did they do with the money once they got it?
Mm.
How did they invest it? What did they buy? What did they do for their family? What did they do with their charities and their churches and things like that? So it's an interesting switch on this is how this person became a millionaire, and that's the millionaire story. It's not that. It's now they have the money from growing up with, a lot of them grew up with nothing. What happens now when your business scales properly, is successful? You have now time and money. Now, what do you do with it? And so it's that piece where I'm always a believer that we've got to understand and learn from those that are ahead of us in order to scale properly. And then that's the one that I recommend. And it's not a super long listen each week, usually about 30 to 45 minutes, and really enjoy it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can find me. So email is chris@springslawgroup.com. And you can find me on Instagram, Christopher Nicolason, LinkedIn, Christopher Nicolason, Facebook, I'm open there. TikTok, I think on TikTok, I'm CN the Law. And then, yeah, I'm happy to give my cell too. If anybody wants to text me after and we can chat, as well, I'm always happy to have a lunch or a meetup in town. So my cell, 719-291-6346. Always happy to chat. And again, like I said, if somebody wants a copy of Buy Back Your Time, I'm happy to send it out to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was so value packed. Thank you for sharing this philosophy of goal setting. I'm so excited to be able to go try it because I have been in the thick of goal setting as well. So I'm so excited to have some structure around goal setting. I think that any business owner could benefit from this and just try it out. Being able to have some framework around how you go and accomplish goals is so helpful. Before we go, I want to take a moment to talk about something crucial for every local business: your Google business profile. Managing your Google business profile can be overwhelming and time consuming, whether it's setting it up correctly or troubleshooting verification issues. And if it's not done right, you're missing out on potential customers who can't find you online. That's why we've put together a free Google business profile guide. This guide is designed to help you set up and manage your profile effortlessly, ensuring you attract more local customers. Inside, you'll find step-by-step instructions from our experts on creating and optimizing your profile, tips for troubleshooting common issues like verification and suspension, strategies for making your profile stand out, and a checklist to help you keep on track of everything that you need to do to have a live Google business profile. Don't let a poorly managed Google business profile hold your business back. Download our free guide today under succeedingsmall.co/GBP guide. That's GBP guide, all one word. You just listened to another episode of the Succeeding Small podcast. I hope you had a pen to jot down all the actionable strategies we just shared. If not, no worries. We have every episode on our website, including transcripts, YouTube recordings, and plenty of small business resources. So visit the show notes and check out the incredible archive of content created for you and your scaling small business. We are truly invested in your success, and we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social to request topics you want to hear, or leave us a review wherever you listen. You're one step closer to being that small business success story.